And yet it's still pretty profound stuff if you understand it. And for the first time I read through Thomas, honestly, I hated it. I thought this is stupid. It's the dumbest thing I've ever read. These are nonsensical sayings. They're not connected to each other. They just sound like someone trying to sound like they're wise. And I just completely rejected it until I read this book that completely decoded it for me. And then it was sort of like the missing key, the missing element to help it make sense to me. And all it was just pointing out that to make sense of the Gospel of Thomas, you have to recognize that every one of those sayings in Thomas is Jesus speaking about that about non-duality, and that separation is an illusion. And if you read it through that assumption, through that filter, all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, this makes, not only does it make sense, it makes beautiful, profound sense. And that's why I've been loving the Gospel of Thomas ever since.
Yeah. I think you're right. When you read a text like that through the lens of this is nonsense, you're going to see it one way, but when you read it through the lens of, like you said, it's talking about that non-duality piece, it does bring a lot of the sayings to light, because I've read through it too. And there's 3/4 of it, even today, it doesn't make much sense to me. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I find it fascinating anyway. But then there's other pieces that really come to life, but it comes to life when you read it through that lens. Is that the Duffy book that you're talking about? I think What's the name of that book? Do you remember?
Let me see, it's sitting right here. It's called The Hidden Gospel of Thomas by William G. Duffy.
That's right.
And really, that was the greatest thing. Somebody sent it to me. I didn't buy it. Someone mailed it to me, kind of like look it over, and I was like, whatever. I was traveling. I read it on a plane, and by the time I got to the second chapter, and he just convinced me. It was like he showed me that, oh my gosh, that's really what this is about. And then all of a sudden, I just kept reading, and every page I turned, I was like, this makes sense now, and it's beautiful and exciting. And the beautiful thing is too, it's not like, oh, this is some new strange teaching. Like, no, all of this stuff that's in Thomas is affirmed in the Gospel of John, in Ephesians, in Colossians, in First John. All of these things that made it into the New Testament, that continue to affirm that Christ is all and is in all, and that that we can't be separated from Christ, and all these kind of things. And so it's really exciting. It's just beautiful to see, like, these ideas were capturing the imagination of early Christians in the first and second centuries, and did so for a long time until, of course, I guess it was Athanasius who decided that once he had authority from Constantine, he could decide that these books are in, and that means these books are out, and burn these books. And thankfully, somebody decided in Egypt not to burn them, but to bury them in a jar, and we found them.
That's right. So good. All right, Keith, last question for you. Obviously, there's a lot of other things, like I said, we could talk about. You talk about quantum physics in your book.